last night I went and saw If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, which is the new Mary Bronstein movie. Her previous feature was called Yeast. It stars Rose Byrne, and then
that's the one where she's like a mom, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I want to see that.
It's really good, and the supporting cast is Christian Slater, Conan O'Brien, and A$AP Rocky. It very much, I've been calling it Uncut Gems for girls because it gives that like same level of anxiety that Uncut Gems did. But yeah, so it's about a mom whose daughter has some sort of eating disorder, and so she's having to do these like nightly feeding things through a tube. I think it's like less of like an eating disorder and more of a phobia of food. Like she just like literally does not eat, and so they're having to like feed her through a tube at night. And then in the midst of all of this, her husband, I think, is either like a ship captain or a pilot, and so he's gone for like 8 weeks, and then the ceiling of their apartment caves in at the beginning of the movie. So then they're basically, the bulk of the movie is them living in this motel. It is a movie that I think captured like the domestic and emotional labor that like women do that men really take for granted in heterosexual relationships, but also in like all working relationships. And also like Mary Bronstein at the talk back last night was talking about how she was really inspired by like the ways in which like she felt like when she was in the midst of dealing with a crisis with her child, she felt like she was losing herself in the task of caring for her child, but then also the tension of like, and then when this crisis is over, who will I be if not this mom in crisis? And it was just really good. I really liked it. I love movies that just like make you anxious. I have a letterbox list called The Best Boys, and I added this one to it immediately. I just thought it was so fucking good. Mary Bronstein as a filmmaker is someone who like did not immediately find success. She was I think a school psychologist in New York City for 8 years, and so she like did lots of other things before having any sort of success as an artist. And like that is the experience of most artists. Anytime a supporting cast is that crazy, it could go either way, but they were all really delightful in it.
Speaking of modern horrors, welcome to Informed Attraction, a podcast hosted by one drowned child and one doll wearing overalls. A podcast about how sometimes your kink is Spirit Halloween, and that's probably okay. In this two-parter, to round out our October season, McKenna and I are going to talk about slashers and the tropes around disability in slasher films. This may or may not have come up on the podcast already, but I am a massive horror fan. I would say that the majority of what I watch is horror, and it is by and large my favorite genre. When it comes to the classic slashers, I'm a huge fan of Friday the 13th, my favorite being Friday the 13th Part 7, New Blood, which is basically Jason versus Carrie, and it fucking rules.
I think also I'm the drowned child and you're the doll in overalls. Do you agree?
Sure. I think we can both be either.
Okay. I just always like to do a tag yourself to start each episode. What's true about me is I don't know, I think I've seen a Halloween movie. So Aubrey's really in this bitch, and I am not locked in.
That's why I fear this could potentially go a little longer than we're anticipating.
Okay.
Because I really had to stop myself from going very deep into the history of horror films, because I am truly like a genre fan. I'm seated for horror. If somebody is like, I don't like horror movies, I'm kind of like, we're not gonna really be able to connect about movies in the same way. And that's okay.
Yeah, and I should say I love horror movies. Just for some reason, this like the capital S slasher genre is one that I've just sort of missed.
And to me, that's the real shit right there.
Yeah.
I really view horror movies and slashers in particular like pizza. Even when it's bad, still good. I could probably have an entirely separate podcast where I just give my takes on horror movies. That could be a spin-off one day when our podcast network launches. But since this podcast is grounded in appearance-based tropes, I'm going to center today about attractiveness in the slasher genre and the ways that most slasher villains are united by shared visible disability. Then in part 2, we're going to talk about who I think is the sexiest slasher, Candyman. Yeah. I said it. As I love to give caveats, I do want to say that I am not disabled. I do consider myself an ally to the disabled community. And as I've researched this topic, I've tried to find voices from disabled people about their opinions on the way disability is portrayed in slashers. kind of niche, not like a ton of like, huge critical academic texts on the topic. So a lot of it is, comments of people on Reddit, but I've tried to just be sensitive to the voices of actual disabled people as I give my thoughts and feelings on these things.
I love when we have a little bit of a conspiracy theory and then we have to try to go find academic research to back up the crazy shit we're thinking about.
Yeah.
Like, I was doing a lot of academic research in the very first series we did on the sexy rabbits, and it was like, I found some academic articles that spoke to that point, but it was like insane trying to track them down by putting in like an insane number of keywords, because if you just typed in sexy rabbits into scholar.google.com, it wasn't the most large bevy of information that I needed.
Well, the reality of academia is that you gotta get funding to do research.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, it's a tough sell. Here's the deal. Right now, we live in a political climate where it's a tough sell to be like, I want to research children who have eating disorders who are not white. And people are like, I don't know about that. So being like, I want to study why people think rabbits are the sexiest anthropomorphized animal, that's rough.
Yeah. Well, they did just send around that thing that was like a pledge that universities could sign, that if they signed it, he'll give them money. Doesn't sound like a bribe at all, but
Yeah, our democracy is dead in America. That's been proven time and time again.
Yeah.
So today is mainly a history episode where I'm going to detail this idea of the monstrous body trope in horror, and I'm going to give way too much detail about the history of the slasher genre. It's going to be a lot of me talking about movies that Mackenna has not watched.
Hell yeah.
And being like, this is a movie that is important.
And I'll be here with my Mossman curry because I ordered food in order to be able to eat before we recorded the podcast, and instead it showed up 3 minutes before we were supposed to start recording. So thank God that this is an Aubrey Yap sesh, and I'm here to do what? Say it with me. Jokes.
Yes. So early horror literature is often framed around physical difference as a visual shorthand for inner corruption. I think one great example of this is Frankenstein's monster, which is a stitched together grotesque body that reflects fears about science, progress, and the violation of the natural order. Big difference between the Frankenstein's monster depicted in the book Frankenstein and the movie Frankenstein that's depicted in the Universal movies. One thing that they're united by is this idea that the brain that is put into the Frankenstein monster is a quote-unquote criminal brain. Oh. I have read some interpretations of that where people are like, this is kind of an old-timey way to suggest that this is like a developmentally disabled brain.
Oh, interesting.
So that is like one thing we could probably do an entire episode about just that interpretation of Frankenstein's monster and the way that developmental or cognitive disability can be dehumanized and even made into something that's like incredibly horrific or villainized rather.
Yeah, and Frankenstein is a rich topic in and of itself, and also like what you just said, connecting to good old Poor Things, which came out last year.
Yeah, so the horror is really these externalized fears expressed through abnormal bodies. And again, like when I say abnormal or when I'm talking about things that are deviating from the norm, I'm talking about like a traditionally like ableist definition of like what normal is. Normal is kind of fake. So we have this idea of Frankenstein's monster in the 1800s. Other monsters are sort of written about in a similar way, where they've got these sort of monstrous appearances to them. And then we start to see these monsters portrayed in film in the 20s and 30s. So we have examples like The Phantom of the Opera in 1925 and Frankenstein in 1931 that explicitly link facial disfigurement or non-normative bodies with monstrosity. Another example is crime writer Mary Roberts Reinhardt, who influenced horror literature with her novel The Circular Staircase in 1908, and that was adapted into the silent film The Bat in 1926, which is about guests at a remote mansion who are menaced by a killer in a grotesque mask. So we're seeing the threads of what will eventually become the slasher genre in as really early as like the 1920s. The success of The Bat as a silent film led to this series of old dark house films, which include The Cat and the Canary in 1927 and The Old Dark House in 1932, which I actually just watched. The director of the play that I'm in had us all sit and watch this movie because it's one of his favorites. Both of those movies that I just said are pretty interesting. They're basically town dwellers or people who are not native to the area are pitted against strange country folk, and that becomes another recurring theme that we start to see later in the horror genre, right? Like in The Old Dark House, the idea is you've got these sort of like dandy city people who go to this house because it's raining and they need to seek shelter, and it's these like old weird people, and then they're like, oh, by the way, our brother is an evil guy who we have locked in the attic and he just got out. And that movie is hilarious because the people who are the family, they basically just go, we're gonna lock ourselves in our room, do your best. And they just like lock themselves in their room, and then our protagonists have to fight this madman.
It's not quite the same thing, but I mean, the trope of humans hunting other humans obviously goes back to like the most dangerous game, and I'm sure before that. But that, what we were just talking about, made me think about the episode of Supernatural, where, because in Supernatural, it's always like a supernatural entity that they're hunting. But then there's one episode called like The Benders, where they go and it's just like these people who hunt people, and they're like, oh, nothing supernatural was going on there, just some fucked up shit.
And that is what I think is interesting with modern horror, is I think that right now, I don't know, we're in such a strange time of horror right now because we really are in this like post-slasher, even like self-referential slashers like Scream. Yeah. And honestly, like for a while, I think we were in like the psychological thriller A24 vibe. And I think a lot of people are already kind of bored with that again. I know I am, because anytime I see a horror movie and it's like, it's trauma, I'm like, get out of here. I'm bored.
Yeah, I'm curious about, like, I feel like the one that kind of popped off this year was Weapons. Mm-hmm. And, like, I think there is something in this, like, I think we are getting back into the, like, something is going amiss in a town. Mm-hmm. Sort of vibe, because that was sort of what, I mean, the monkey was like a haunted object movie, but then it was also like this, how this whole town ends up being affected by it. Mm-hmm. So I do feel like we're still in the like Annabelle haunted object era a little bit.
And you didn't like the monkey, did you?
No, I did not like the monkey.
I loved it.
Did you really?
I did. I loved it. So I actually have a strange relationship with Oz Perkins movies because on paper, I love most Oz Perkins movies. And then when I actually watch them, I love the themes he gets into. I really like his visual style. I usually find his movies kind of boring. The Monkey, I was seated. I love it. And he has such an interesting history because his dad was Anthony Perkins and then his mom died in 9/11. And like I just thought The Monkey was such a cool, I don't know. I felt, to me, that was actually a very personal film for him to be contemplating on death and just the absurdity and randomness of death. And I thought that it was really interesting to sit with.
See, the tone of that movie, I could not figure out what the tone of that movie was trying to be. It was, at times, it felt like it was like, I don't know, like at times it felt like a true haunted object movie, but then at other times it felt like it was making fun of the haunted object genre, and then at times it felt like it was like making fun of the horror genre in general. Like there were moments that felt very like scary movie-y, and I just the whole time was like trying to pin down how I was supposed to be engaging with this movie, and the rules of how I was supposed to engage with the film was so unclear to me that I was just having a really hard time like locking into it. This was a similar problem I had to I Saw the TV Glow, because I just was like, I don't know like what the rules of engagement with this film are.
Another film I loved.
Yeah, and I really had a hard time with both of those movies, like just figuring out like what, like how I was supposed to watch it. Mm-hmm. And for me, the struggle with that, if I can't, I feel like with movies I need to have like its claws in me in the first 15 minutes, because if I lose the thread of how I'm supposed to be like tracking it, enjoying it, understanding it, then I feel so lost. And The Monkey, despite like aspects of it that I really enjoyed, I think honestly the son character was so so tonally threw me off. Like, just so, because, like, yeah, because I was like, this is so serious. Like, this kid is playing it, like, so much like a straight drama.
Well, because for him it is.
Yeah, but we weren't really seeing it from his point of view. And so it just, like, I really was like, I don't know. And he's introduced at a point, like, I was really struggling with how I was supposed to engage with that movie in a way that, like, I couldn't. I did not get on the ride in time to enjoy it, I think is the best way to put it.
I think I probably have a different relationship with it too, because I've like followed Oz Perkins's entire career, and I love hearing him talk about movies. I love hearing his approach to filmmaking. I love hearing him talk about his own like life and his views about life and death and everything like that, and how that influences his art. And I think for me, I've always really struggled to I love the themes of the movies he makes, but then when I actually go to watch them, I'm like, you're not hitting this for me. But The Monkey was the one where I was like, okay, like, I get it. I'm on the same page as you.
Yeah, that's so funny, because I feel like the way that you described your relationship with other ones of his movies is the way that I felt about it. I was like, I kind of see what, like, you want me to take away from this, but I'm not sure about the mode that it's being told in. I also, to be fair, have not seen any of, like, I never saw Longlegs. I've not seen any of his other movies.
Yeah. You might like the one that he did with, what's her name? Sophia Lillis, the redheaded girl from It.
Oh, sure.
What was it? It's like the Hansel and Gretel one.
Oh, Gretel and Hansel.
Yeah, that low-key, that was feminist cinema.
Slay.
Low-key, he made a very feminist film, and it is, like, again, I think it's kind of boring to watch, and I actually don't really like it very much that I want to recommend it as a film that you watch to enjoy. But in terms of, like, watching it as, like, a feminist reinterpretation of folklore, love it. I love it.
Yeah, but why would I do that when I could just watch The Witch again? You know?
Understandable.
Why wouldn't I just watch The Witch again? Why wouldn't I just not enjoy The Witch for, like, probably the 20th time?
Fair. Black Phillip. I want to get a Black Phillip tattoo. That's what I want.
Hey, hell yeah. If you got a goat, I got a sheep.
Oh! So going back to the 1930s, the 1932 film Freaks is really pivotal here. Do you know anything about Freaks?
I've heard of Freaks. I know that people in a horror film class that I know had to watch Freaks.
So Freaks is really pivotal in that it cast real disabled actors, but also within the production, those actors were exploited. And the film in general reinforces the idea that visual difference is something that should be made a spectacle, or something that's threatening, or something that is just an object of pity.
How did you feel about American Horror Story Freak Show?
Did not finish it. So that season came out my freshman year of college. And so I remember watching probably the first half of the season on like my tiny dorm room TV. Yeah. And then I got too busy, smoking weed.
My brother and I would stay up late to watch it because it was my junior year of high school and his freshman year of high school. We would stay up late to watch it. And we stopped like halfway through the season because I was just like, what the fuck is going on here?
You and I are both synced where our favorite American Horror Story season is Asylum, right?
Yes, that is correct.
By and large, Asylum is the best season of American Horror Story.
Yeah, I don't think I would go back and rewatch. I might rewatch the very first season just from like a where this came from to where the fuck it is now, like, point of view. But I think Asylum is the only one that I would return to in a way that, like, oh, I want to watch something that I enjoy. Yeah. I've tried to watch Hotel twice. I think I've, again, gotten about halfway through it. And those boys all look too similar. I can't keep track of who the fuck is who because they all look too similar.
We've talked about this before. My thing with Ryan Murphy is I think Ryan Murphy is actually really good at making TV. The problem is that he reaches a point with every show he does where he's like, I don't give a fuck anymore. And it is so apparent at what point he reaches that. But then the show just keeps going.
Yeah, it's true.
So Freaks is a 1932 American pre-code drama horror film. And basically...
Aubrey, what does pre-code mean?
We talked about the Hays Code. Go back and listen to our other episodes.
Did we talk about the Hays Code?
Yes, we did. I remember we talked about it in, what was it? I think in Funny Fat Men we talked about it with Roscoe Arbuckle.
Okay.
Yeah,
The Hays Code was a bunch of censorship rules for people who don't know.
Yeah, basically the Hays Code was a set of industry guidelines for the self-censorship of content that was applied to most motion pictures released by major studios in the USA from like the 1930s, like up till the 60s, right?
Yeah, it was a long ass time.
So basically you have this really interesting thing with film in the 20s and 30s where pretty much before the Hays Code, 30s films were really cool. Like, they showed women drinking and partying and, like, actual interesting dynamics between people. And then pretty much after the Hays Code goes into place, you start to see this, like, big, sanitization of film. So, essentially, Freaks is set amongst this backdrop of a traveling French circus, and it follows a trapeze artist who joins a group of carnival sideshow performers with this plan to seduce and murder a dwarf who's in the troupe in order to gain his inheritance. Fun fact about the movie Freaks, you know the trope where people are like, one of us, one of us. That's from Freaks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's like a scene where she's having dinner with the freaks, and basically they all just start chanting, like, one of us, one of us.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah, so that's where that comes from.
100-year-old meme.
Yes. Freaks is particularly notable because of the portrayals of the freaks in the film by actually casting people who worked as sideshow performers and had real-life disabilities. So this includes dwarf siblings Harry and Daisy Earls, Johnny Eck, who had sacral agenesis, the conjoined twin sisters Daisy and Violet Hilton, and Schlitzie, a man who had microphaly.
Whoa, Aubrey?
Yeah.
Something just happened.
What?
To me. Okay, so Daisy and Violet Hilton.
Mm-hmm.
This is, okay. There's a musical called Sideshow that I believe is, let me make sure I'm right. Yeah, okay. So there's a musical called Sideshow, which is based on Violet and Daisy Hilton. I did not realize that that was a musical based on real people, but as soon as you said conjoined twins Daisy and Violet, I literally was like, wait, Sideshow was based on real people? That's crazy. I thought it was just like a wholly fictional thing, but it is not.
It is not.
It is not.
Apparently not.
Wow, okay. Well, that's so interesting to know. I've sung songs from Sideshow before.
Just as you with no conjoined twin?
Yeah, well, with someone else.
Oh.
It was Emily Skinner and Alice Ripley when it was on Broadway. Broadway fans may have just cringed a little bit at hearing Alice Ripley's name because she was famously canceled for grooming.
Oh, no!
She's who plays Diana in Next to Normal as well.
Sad. Because of the content of Freaks, it was actually banned in the United Kingdom for over 30 years and was labeled brutal and grotesque in Canada. The filming...
That's the name of my sex tape. I'm gonna cut that joke.
Freaks was filmed in Los Angeles in the fall of 1931, and some employees at MGM were so discomforted by the presence of the actors portraying the freaks on set that the performers were not allowed to be on the studio lot, and they were instead put in a specially built tent away from the able-bodied actors.
I'm the biggest hater on so many of these movie people from the 30s in some regard, because why are we doing that? Because weren't they also awful to all the folks who worked on Wizard of Oz?
Yes. I mean, that's the exploitation, right? Of like, you want to have a movie about quote unquote freaks, but the people who it's because you see them as subhuman. That's why you're exploiting them for profit.
Right. Well, it's okay. It's okay. When I get my time machine, we're just adding to the list of people who I'm going to go back in time and can catch these hands, you know?
Yes. The film had test screenings in January of 1932, with many members of the audience reacting negatively, thinking that the film was too grotesque because of the portrayal of disabled people. And not like they were disgusted by the fact that they were being treated poorly on screen, but the fact that they were like having to look at a disabled person.
And that is still how many conservatives feel now.
Yeah. In response to this, MGM executive Irving Thalberg, without the consent of the director, edited the original 90-minute feature, which was significantly cut, with additional alternative footage that was incorporated to help increase the running time. So the final...
Oh.
Yeah, so the final abridged cut of the film was 64 minutes, and the original version of Freaks no longer exists.
Oh, interesting. I thought at first you were saying that they tried to make the movie longer than it was, but I understand. They were trying to make it shorter.
Yeah, so they cut a bunch of content and then essentially used like B-roll stuff to help like pad it out. Yeah, okay. So when you actually go to watch it, like it is not, again, not like a movie I'd highly recommend. I think it's really interesting to watch, like in the sense that like I think that being able to see that disabled people have always existed is something that is really powerful. And I really do appreciate watching Freaks in the sense that, like, I can see disabled people existing at a time when their existence was largely kept hidden.
Yeah.
That being said, like, it's, like, bad.
Yeah.
So then, as we start to get into the 40s and 50s, we start to see horror bodies begin to symbolize social anxieties. So things like nuclear fallout, disease, mutation. I think examples like Creatures from the Black Lagoon from 1954 and The Blob from 1958 really reflect this fear of like unnatural, grotesque bodies. Then we get into the 70s.
Bow wow wow.
And this is where I'm going to talk about what the slasher genre is. So essentially, right, we have this history of, you know, scary monsters are sort of like humanoid, but they've got some aspect to them that is separating them from other people. You have some films that are like explicitly showing disabled people as villains, and then as you're getting into the 40s and 50s, starting to get more monstrous humanoid, but like, is it human, is it not? And then we start to have the slasher boom in the 70s. Essentially, what is a slasher? A slasher is a subgenre.
Aubrey, I have a question.
Yeah.
What is a slasher?
A slasher is a subgenre of horror film that involves a killer or a group of killers stalking and murdering groups of people, often using bladed or sharp tools. That is actually...
Because that's where the slashing comes from, because they get slashed with a knife.
Yeah. Well, Well, I mean, it's kind of like true though, because if you just have a movie where like Ghostface has a gun,
right? It's a different thing. Like get it? Yeah. It like I did that in a silly voice, but like that is actually very true. That like part of the thing with the slasher is there's a sharp object involved. Isn't that a horror movie? No. That's like a drama TV show called Sharp Objects. But because it's like, you know, we have lots of knives or chainsaws or very long fingernails.
Well. And stabbing is something that is really quite personal. Like when people talk about, I'm not going to get into like the psychology of a serial killer, but like to stab someone is like quite an intimate act compared to like gun violence, which is fairly removed. So
do you know my whole thing about, okay.
What?
So I don't know if it's a phobia or what it is, but I am fine with needles. Like seeing a needle, nothing. Does nothing for me. I'm like, that's great. Whatever. Who cares? See a knife? Who cares? What? Couldn't care less. The idea of a foreign object being in my body is really harrowing to me. And if you're wondering, McKenna, have you had panic attacks about that when it comes to like sex? The answer is yes. But specifically like I when I get tattooed, it doesn't really bother me because it just feels like it's on top of this skin, and like the ink doesn't really bother me. But when I get like shots or blood drawn or anything, I cannot watch the needle enter or exit my skin. If I just see it in there, it's usually okay. But if I watch it enter or exit, I'm like,
well, because it's like pulling something from you, right? Because the tattoo is like, it's going on top of your skin, but with the shot, it's actually pulling something out.
Especially like they were, oh my God, I got my HPV vaccine over the past like 6 months because you have to get 3 shots. And with the HPV vaccine, it's like, I think it goes like deeper into the muscle or something. And when they were describing that to me, I literally was like, okay, hold on. Now that you've said that, I need a second because that freaked me the fuck out. It'll be fine. Just give me like 20 seconds to like forget that you told me that. But anyways, I think I would be very upset to be, but like also the idea of like a bullet entering me, like it does have the same like as like being stabbed does in a weird way. And so it's interesting, like the act of both those things happening to me feel the same to me, but I guess I wouldn't have to look the person in the eyes necessarily if they were shooting me with a gun.
See, and if I knew I would survive, I would get stabbed. I would just want to see what it's like.
No.
I kind of feel the same way about getting shot. Like, if I knew
We've talked about that before.
If I knew I could live, if I knew that I would live, I would be like, all right, fuck it.
No, I have no.
Same with getting tased. I wanna get pepper sprayed and tased and shit.
I do not. There's lots of experiences in life I want to have. I think I've undergone enough emotional torment that I'm good on the physical torment side of things.
So although the term slasher may occasionally be used informally as a generic term for any horror film that involves murder, film analysts cite an established set of characteristics which set slasher films apart from other horror subgenres like monster movies, splatter films, supernatural, and psychological horror films. I'll be honest, guys, I've never taken a film class in my life. I went to the school of hard knocks, and...
You have a fucking PhD, you weird little freak.
Not in horror, though. I'm self-taught in horror, and... People get really annoying, I think, when they try to define exactly what is different subgenres of horror, and I even get annoyed by it. So, yeah, I choose my own definitions. The movies that I'm going to be talking about are movies that I consider slashers. I think they're ones that pretty much everyone would consider a slasher. But if you want to send me an email that's like... send it to informedattraction@gmail.com.
Because then I'll read it, not Aubrey, because I'm the one who checks the email inbox.
Slasher films typically adhere to a specific formula. A past wrongful action causes severe trauma that is reinforced by a commemoration or anniversary that reactivates or re-inspires the killer. So we see this in Halloween, we see this in Friday the 13th, we see this actually in Nightmare on Elm Street. We see this in a lot of different slashers. It's not, I think, key to the definition, but it is one thing that the definitions of slashers tries to unite.
You know what's interesting? There has been this influx, I feel, of slasher films in the past, few years that are like holiday tied, because there was the Thanksgiving one and then there was the Valentine's Day one, and so there is this sort of like resurgence of camp slasher films that are really, I think, playing on that specific notion of like a yearly anniversary by using like a well-known date for marketing purposes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing that Thanksgiving one, the trailer for the Thanksgiving slasher, like a million times in the theater. You sure better believe I did not see that movie, but I did see that trailer more times than I could count.
I did see it, and I love it, and I can't wait to watch it in a month from now. Holiday horror is its own subgenre, in my opinion, and I love holiday horror. I think it's very fun. I think there should be... I love Krampus. I watch Krampus every Christmas. And I love Black Christmas. What other...
Aubrey's in White Christmas.
I'm in White Christmas, which is a bit different thematically.
Yeah.
Slashers are built around stalk and murder sequences, and they draw upon the audience's feelings of catharsis, recreation, and displacement. A lot of people relate it to sexual pleasure. Like, they're like, people like slasher films because it's basically edging you, and then you come. And I don't know.
I feel like I don't think I get... You can say that about anything that involves suspense.
Yeah.
That's like anything that involves suspense is like technically that feeling of like delayed gratification. But I don't know. Sure.
I think there's a lot of people who try
Sure.
to apply like being a little freak to enjoying horror, and people trying to be like, if you like horror, it's because you're a little fucking pervert weirdo. And I don't know.
And it's true. And that's true. That's true. That's 100%. That's
Yeah.
disrespectful. Sorry.
I'm a little pervert weirdo, so I really can't. I'm not the exception. I'm the rule.
I don't know. I think there's just something too about just like being someone who enjoys feeling things deeply. Because I do think that like part of engaging in like, I mean, you know, even the movie I was talking about at the beginning of this, like if I had legs I'd kick you, like just like enjoying investing time in things that make you feel deeply, any sort of like emotional catharsis, I think is really interesting. And I think what like a lot of horror or anything that like plays on suspense does is it lets you know that relief is coming, but you have to get through the like first, which like sure I guess you could say that's like edging, but I don't know. I don't feel the same about those two things, but maybe I just haven't investigated it deeply enough.
You know how you love anxious cinema?
I love anxious cinema, yes.
I love bleak cinema. I love film where nothing anyone did mattered because they were always doomed from the start. I think to me, because that is like the most horrific concept I can think of, I'm so drawn to films that play upon bleakness. It's why I love the Blair Witch Project, because to me Blair Witch is just like a film where people think the horror of Blair Witch is like The Witch, and that's why they watch it and get disappointed. And the horror of it is that you're watching people lost in the woods who are going to die, and you're watching them slowly realize that they are going to die. And I love film like that. And I know that that's really dark, but it's just always been what I'm drawn to. I don't know. I think horror fans, it's a lot of like, I think it's comforting in a way to be able to engage with things that really do frighten you, but in a way that is like fun. And that to me is the catharsis, I guess.
Yeah. Something about like the inevitability and being able to engage in those parts of, I don't know, life that are really, I think that's an interesting thing that like Ari Aster played on in like his earlier movies. I didn't ever see Eddington or Beau is Afraid, but like in both Midsommar and Hereditary, like there is this feeling of like, there are forces at play bigger than our protagonists, and it sort of, their actions don't really matter, because the bigger container of the world is so much more powerful than they are. I think there's like in the same way that people find like peace and nihilism, or like or like even like stoicism is in a very similar way here, of like my whole life philosophy is everything's made up and the points don't matter. Thank you very much. Whose line is it anyways? And I think that there's like a similar thing being poked at here of like, nothing the characters action, there are no actions the characters can take to break out of this. I feel like the divide in that sort of horror is if you have a successful final girl or not. Because films that like everyone dies are very different than like films where a final girl escapes.
Yeah, so I will skip to my little final girl section and then I'll go back. So one thing that is also specific to the slasher trope is the idea of the final girl, or occasionally the final boy, like in Nightmare on Elm Street 2. There has to be a specific character who is almost universally the protagonist, who faces off with the killer and defeats them. Examples of this are Sidney Prescott in Scream and Laurie Strode in Halloween.
Yep.
Usually with the final girl or final boy character, someone close to them usually dies during the movie. So like their boyfriend or their best friend or their sibling or their parent or someone who they are close to is killed by the killer, and that's part of their impetus to like survive and defeat the killer.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, people describe the final girl as being virgins among sexually active teens. I personally find that trope a little bit of like self-mythologizing.
Yeah. Because
of like a handful of like very high profile examples.
Yeah.
But I think that the prominence of that is overstated.
I agree.
I think the innocent like virgin qualities ascribed to final girls has pretty much been filtered through the lens of parody, subversion, and self-awareness rather than like deployed sincerely. Like in most horror films that I watch, and especially in most slashers, they don't like go out of their way to be like, this main character is the virgin. She's just usually the one that's like not actively having sex in the movie.
Right. And I think that's what it is. It's the contrast with characters who are actively having sex.
And not even always, though.
Not even always, but I do think there's like tropes in movies in general. I mean, like you can look at like Grease and you have like Sandy and Rizzo. Like there do tend to be like foil characters in all types of movies of like the girl next door and then also like the sultry one. And I feel like because the world is weird, I don't know if you saw that article that someone posted in the Free Press that was like, Tilly Norwood is my favorite actress, who's like the AI actor, the AI fucking not actress, I don't even want to call her an actress, the AI creation they're trying to sell to me as an actress. And the article was like, she's my favorite actress because blah 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 blah. Also, it's one of the few times you can see a virgin on screen. And I was like, why are not men, but why are some men so obsessed with virginity? It makes me want to puke in my mouth just a little bit.
Because it's a form of control. It's like how there are men online who are using AI to undress women who dress modestly and to also put clothes on women who are dressed scantily. Because it's not really about the clothes, it's about having power over women. Films that have similar structures to slashers but have non-human antagonists who lack a conscience, like in Alien or in Terminator, are not traditionally considered slasher films, although most slasher antagonists are superhuman in some way or like have supernatural traits or possess slightly warped or abstract anthropomorphic forms both physically and metaphysically. This is just me saying, usually slashers, they gotta be dudes. They gotta be person-shaped.
They gotta be person-shaped. I'm gonna write a slasher about a weird zombie otter with a machete coming to terrorize your town.
Yes. When slasher films become franchises, they typically take on the villain protagonist characteristics, with the series following the continued efforts of that antagonist rather than any of the killer's disposable victims, including any individual entry's heroes or the final survivors. So basically, like, you know, when you watch Halloween, you're not usually watching it for Laurie Strode. You're watching it for Michael Myers. When you're watching Nightmare on Elm Street, you're watching it for Freddy Krueger, not of any of the kind of interchangeable protagonist of any of those movies. The antagonist is essentially envisioned and embedded into the public.
Sorry, Aubrey, I was trying to find a joke in there about you hating women and not caring about female protagonists, but I was too late with my jokes about calling Aubrey a misogynist, so I guess another day. I'll have another opportunity.
Trust me, with the way that I talk, another opportunity will arise.
It will arise.
So the antagonist is envisioned and embedded into the public psyche as the main and most marketable or recognizable character, even if their screen time is dwarfed in any specific film by the actual named protagonist. The exception to this is the Scream series, which is very rare because Scream follows its heroine Sidney Prescott rather than the masked killer Ghostface, whose identity changes from film to film and is only revealed in the finale.
I do think, as someone who has not seen Scream, but like knows a lot about it from like existing in the world, I do think Scream kind of ate it down when it came to format with that.
McKenna, you've gotta watch Scream.
Yeah, I'll work on it.
You won't.
I will. I'll work on it.
I'm checking.
I'll work on it.
I'm checking your letterbox. I'm gonna the next time you log something and it's not Scream, I'm gonna go. You really watch this?
It won't be because I'm in the middle of going to the New York Film Festival. Also, I need to watch Candyman first because you're making me watch Candyman.
I am making you watch Candyman.
Yes.
I do want to talk about another trope associated with slashers that I am gonna do a little bit of a debunking on. This idea has been oftentimes joked about in media, where if you're watching a slasher movie, the black character dies first. There was an actual analysis of horror films that was published in 2013 in Complex Magazine, and the trope is largely self-mythologizing as opposed to a statistical reality. Only 10% of the movies that they analyzed had the black character die first.
I wonder if that came from in a way that, like, there was often only one character of color, specifically a black character, in any of these movies, and they were never the final girl, which means inherently, and then it became of, like, I wonder if in some ways the trope died for the trope went from, like, the black character always dies to then at some point dies first, because I do think it's probably true that they probably die. They do die.
Absolutely. I really can't, like, genuinely off the top of my head, I can't think of a final girl or final boy example who is black.
Right, exactly. And so thusly, I think that's probably where that trope came from, is that notion that they're never the final girl, but the idea that it is first is not true.
Yes. So mild debunking in that if there is a black character in a slasher film, they are not necessarily going to die first. However, they're gonna die.
A soft debunk.
Yeah, soft debunk. Now I'm going to get into the history of slasher films. I wanted to establish what some of the tropes are, and then talk about the history and where they came from. Two films that are considered psychological horror films, both released in 1960, are considered the sort of origin point of a lot of modern slashers. And those are Peeping Tom, released in 1960, and Psycho, released in 1960.
I've seen Psycho.
I've seen both, and I'm going to be honest, I think Peeping Tom is a better movie.
I have not seen Peeping Tom. I just wanted to flex that I'd actually seen one of these movies.
I think Psycho is wonderful. I think it's an amazing film. Peeping Tom is so unique in that it is a movie that was made in 1960 that genuinely feels like, just in terms of its cinematography, its lighting, it feels so modern. Like, it's shockingly modern looking, to the point where when you watch them both side by side, I just think the visual aspect of Peeping Tom puts it miles ahead of Psycho.
Because Peeping Tom is the movie about the guy who he's like a photographer, right? Like, he kills him in so that he can. Yeah, okay.
Really cool, really well made. Again, like, I honestly kind of put them on the same level. I think Psycho is probably better written, but just visually, Peeping Tom is, I mean, just, it's mind-blowing that it was made in 1960.
Totally.
But yeah, basically in Peeping Tom, he murders women to photograph their dying expressions. So he's, like, killing them, and then as they're dying, he takes a photo.
Cool.
Psycho is really unique because the visuals in Psycho were deemed unacceptable by movie studios, including the scenes of violence, sexuality, and the iconic shot of a toilet flushing.
Really? They were mad about the toilet flushing?
Oh, you didn't know this? Yeah,
no.
This is like a whole thing. It's like one of the most controversial scenes of Psycho is the scene where they show a toilet flushing.
That's so interesting. I mean, I get why, like, especially, like, 1960, I think we're either still in or just out of the Hays Code era. And so it's like, I understand that, like, why some of the stuff that's in Psycho would be like, oh my god, but the toilet flushing?
Yeah, I think sometimes people say that Psycho was the first American film to show a toilet on screen. That is not true, but I think that, like, during the Hays Code, for the most part, from, like, the 30s to the 60s, you just, like, didn't show bathrooms. I mean, the same way where you didn't show, like, a husband and wife sharing a bed. Like, it created a weird, like, not true to real life at all
to real life,
version of reality.
They needed everybody poops, okay? They just needed everybody poops.
Yes. Psycho was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, including Best Supporting Actress for Janet Leigh, and Anthony Perkins garnering universal acclaim for his role as Norman Bates. Basically,
okay, quick trivia, everyone. Anthony Perkins, who's his kid? Who's his kid? We talked about him earlier. Did you say Oz Perkins? If you did, I am giving you a gold star virtually. Okay, good job.
Basically, after the commercial and critical success of Psycho, bankable stars were starting to actually be in horror films. Before that, the genre was considered, kind of gauche to be in a horror film. And then after that, it was like, oh, you can, like, be an actor and be in horror films.
Gauche to be in House of Wax? Okay.
Many different subgenres start to emerge in the late 50s and 60s. So those include splatter films, it's either creamy or crimey, and then giallo films.
What are those?
So, splatter films are films that focus on gratuitous gore. So, Blood Feast from 1963 was a huge hit at drive-in theaters, and it's often considered the first splatter film.
So the splatter is blood splatter?
The splatter's blood, it's gore.
Oh.
I'm a huge gore fan, so I love a splatter film.
Allegedly, it's creamy.
Creamy? Okay. And then post-World War II, Germany adapted British writer Edgar Wallace's crime novels into a subgenre of their own called creamy film. Creamy films were released in the late 1950s through the early 1970s, and they featured villains in bold costumes accompanied by jazz scores. Films in the genre include Fellowship of the Frog from 1959, about a murderer terrorizing London. That was very successful in America, and then it led to further adaptations like The Green... What?
I'm underscoring you with jazz. Can you continue speaking, please?
Then we had The Green Archer in 1961, Dead Eyes of London in 1961. In total, the Rialto studio produced 32 creamy films between 1959 and 1970.
This is a saxophone.
Now, then we get into Italy's giallo thrillers. I'm a huge fan of Argento films. Those are considered giallo.
Yeah. That's my guy.
Yeah, so giallo films are essentially crime procedurals or murder mysteries that are interlaced with kind of eroticism and psychological horror. Giallo films feature unidentified killers murdering in really grand fashions. They're really interesting because they're so dramatic. Unlike most American slasher films, the protagonists of gialli are frequently, but not always, adults rather than teenagers. And usually it's like rich adults who are very fashionable and honestly are probably wearing like very like Milan fashion, like, you know, rich people clothes at the time.
Fashion baby.
Yes. The protagonists in gialli films are often outsiders who are reluctantly brought into the mystery through extenuating circumstances, like witnessing a murder or being suspected of a crime themselves. Much like creamy films, gialli plots tend to be outlandish and improbable, occasionally employing supernatural elements, but not always. A Bay of Blood from 1971 is a good example of a gialli film. It's a whodunit that features a subplot depicting creative death sequences on a secluded lakeside setting, which greatly inspired Friday the 13th in 1980. And then there's other successes like Deep Red from 1975 and The Bloodstained Shadow in 1978. But around the late 1970s, gialli films start to get diminishing returns. They lose popularity in US markets and they start to honestly kind of just become porns. Yeah, like the gialli directors who were doing cool stuff in the late 70s, essentially after their films stopped being profitable, were like, this is now hardcore pornography.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So the early 1970s saw an increase in exploitation films that lured audiences to grindhouses and drive-ins by advertising the sex and violence in these movies. One example...
I smell sex and violence in this drive-in.
And Soon the Darkness from 1970 set off the 1970s exploitation film kind of wave by maximizing its small budget and taking place in daylight. By 1974, exploitation films battled changing audience taste and their popularity waned. So then in 1974, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre comes out, and it is a major hit. And it is the most commercially successful horror film of that era.
Yes, I've seen that one too, not to flex.
I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, it fucks. It's awesome.
It's awesome. The story concerns a violent clash of cultures and ideals between the counterculture and traditional conservative values, with the film's squealing antagonist Leatherface carrying a chainsaw and wearing the faces of victims that he and his family eat.
No.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre spawned imitators because it had this false based on a true story advertisement that gave way to other supposed reenactments of true crime. Some of these include The Town That Dreaded Sundown in 1976, which is based on the Phantom Killer case, and Another Son of Sam in 1977, which are based
Is that one based on the Son of Sam killings?
It sure is. And then Wes Craven modernized the Sawney Bean legend in The Hills Have Eyes in 1977 by building upon the themes presented in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The Hills Have Eyes, also incredible movie, incredibly brutal movie. It was a huge financial success, and it relaunched Wes Craven's career because it was very damaged after he did The Last House on the Left in 1972. That's the thing. Wes Craven is such a fucking interesting director because I feel like people remember him from Scream and his like 90s like kind of like fun movies that he did, but Last House on the Left in 1972 was so fucking brutal it almost ended his career because people were like, you're a fucking disgusting pervert.
Because it's like about sexual assault, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is. And that, like, I could spend a lot of time talking about movies that depict sexual assault and horror and, you know, like I think of I Spit on Your Grave as an example, which is a very famous example of this trope of, you know, depicting a woman being raped, and then in I Spit on Your Grave, it's ultimately a revenge story where she goes out and kills her rapist.
Right.
I think everyone is entitled to their own personal opinion on these movies. Like, I think that if you're someone who has been victimized and you're like, hey, these movies, like, I find them very exploitative. I think it's fucked up that men are making them. I don't like it at all. Like, you are absolutely allowed to hold that belief. You can sit with that, totally have respect for it. I will say that, like, for me personally, I find some stories that are about people who have been victimized getting revenge, I find that very satisfying to watch. And I think that there's really valid things that you can say about, like, do we need to depict the assault in order to have the revenge story? I think that's a great point, you know. And I'm more inclined to agree that you, like, really don't ever need to actually show sexual assault on screen. I don't know. But also, I could see the case where, like, if the intent is to really make you feel a certain way, how that could be powerful.
I think it just depends on who's doing it, how they're doing it, why they're doing it. If it's for shock value, get it out of there.
Yeah.
If it's for a narrative purpose, I can understand why it might serve. My brain might just have a block up about this. I struggled to, like, think of an example where I was like, yeah, this makes sense that this was shown, but part of this too. I mean, like, not to get all gendery about it, but I will. You know, historically, a lot of movies have been primarily directed by men, and, you know, especially horror movies have been primarily directed by men, and I think that that's like a when you're and this is not to say that, like, men don't get victimized in sexual assault context. They obviously do, but most of the time when we're seeing this in these contexts, it is a man assaulting a woman, and I think it's kind of a tricky thing to be depicting when you're not on the inside of that. And so I just always think that, like, again, it's the who's telling it, why are they telling it, is it servicing the narrative of the story, how are they doing it, is everyone who's actually involved in it on set safe? Like, there's so many different factors that go into it, but it's not my like, oh my god, whenever it came up in Game of Thrones, I was like, I don't need to be looking at this right now. Or one example I can think of too in a different way is, like, The Substance and all of the shots that are incredibly objectifying, right? Of like Margaret Qualley's body. That film is directed by a woman, and automatically that's giving a different flavor to that being done versus if the director is a man. Right, and also, like, it's a movie about appearance. Like, it's a movie about appearance and the way that, like, young women's bodies are fetishized and older women's bodies are abhorred. And so getting all of these shots of their bodies is actually incredibly important in the narrative that the story is telling. You know what's crazy? I was just talking to someone I was talking to a friend who was talking to a straight man about The Substance, and he said his issue with The Substance that Margaret Qualley wasn't attractive enough to be playing the character who she played in The Substance. And I I was like, this is like when men see pictures of Margot Robbie and they go, well, she's actually mid. It's like, what? Oh, I made myself cough doing that. Yeah, anyway. You listen to the Goth Girl series. If you want to go listen to some stuff about the objectification of women, we got that in the can, baby.
Yeah. Following the holiday-themed exploitation film wave that included Home for the Holidays in 1972, All Through the House in 1972, Silent Night, Bloody Night in 1973, and Black Christmas in 1974, there started to be a new wave of holiday horror movies. I think these holiday horror films are actually interesting because, like, Black Christmas really gets into some really cool themes around, like, feminism, abortion, alcoholism, and now people kind of just treat it as like, ooh, hee, holiday horror movie, it takes place at Christmas time. And I'm like, hold on, brothers, you guys missed all the nuance. Black Christmas, I think, is, like, thematically such a precursor to John Carpenter's Halloween, which came out in 1978, in terms of, like, its visual style and just the premise. Where young women are terrorized in a previously safe environment during an iconic holiday.
Where does Black Christmas take place?
A sorority house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they're, like, in their sorority house, basically, and then there is a killer who's starting to come at them.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. So the slasher genre hits its peak somewhere between 1978 and 1984. This is the era that's referred to as the golden age of slasher films. Essentially, the jumpstart of the golden era of slasher films is 1978 with the release of Halloween.
Say it with me. Seen it! Many films use Halloween's template of a murderous figure stalking teens, though they tend to escalate the gore and the nudity from Carpenter's film, which is actually incredibly restrained. Yeah, it's really not, like, I remember watching it being like, oh, this is chill as hell, bro.
Yeah. My, like, controversial take on Halloween is that Halloween has never been, like, a scary movie to me. I really appreciate its filmmaking and essentially what it did to create a genre. I just don't actually think it's a good example of the genre itself.
Well, because I think that John Carpenter's whole thing is sort of like, because I think about like The Thing, and it's like his sort of whole thing is that like sort of like suspense unknown quality, and he's less about like gore and also less about like moments that like freak you out. He's more about that like slow burn of like dread. And I think that, like, Halloween does a really good job of evoking that feeling, but I don't know, I would agree, it's not like, and now here's this crazy kill. Oh, now there's a friggin' stomach exploding. It's like, it's a much more, like, I would say it leans even more on the suspense side than even on, like, the capital H horror side.
Yeah. So what I want to do for this next part is talk about what I think are kind of the three big slashers that people think of when they think of slasher movie. So Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street, and talk a little bit about the slasher antagonist of those movies and essentially their appearance and what about their appearance is interesting. So Halloween was influenced by French New Wave's Eyes Without a Face in 1960 and science fiction thriller Westworld in 1973, as well as Black Christmas, as I just mentioned. It was directed, composed, and co-written by John Carpenter, and essentially it had a budget of $300,000, which is very minimal for a film like that. To minimize the cost, the locations were reduced, and the time of the filming took place over a really brief period. Jamie Lee Curtis, who's the daughter of actress Janet Leigh, was cast as the heroine Laurie Strode, and veteran actor Donald Pleasance was cast as Dr. Sam Loomis. Essentially, when you get into the production of Halloween, they spent most of their budget.
I just want to state, the reason it's relevant that Aubrey's saying that Jamie Lee Curtis is the daughter of Janet Leigh is because Janet Leigh was in Psycho, for those who don't know.
Yes. I hope that I said that earlier. Yeah, Janet Leigh is the star of Psycho. So it was a big deal that, you know, and Jamie Lee Curtis, I might have been in a movie before this, but this is like her first starring role.
And it was like a big deal for her to be like the protagonist of like a capital H horror movie, since her mom was the star of like a capital H horror movie.
Yeah. And she was, at the time, cheap to get, and Donald Pleasance was expensive to get. So they decided to spend all their money on Donald Pleasance and do their best with Jamie Lee Curtis, who I think does an amazing job.
Yeah.
If you've never seen the opening of Halloween, Halloween's first scene is pretty iconic because it opens with a 6-year-old boy's point of view as he kills his older sister. And that is Michael Myers. Halloween was a bit of a difficult sell for studios. When studios were shown an early cut of Halloween that didn't have the score in it, all major American studios declined to distribute it, with one executive even remarking that it was not scary. So John Carpenter added the music himself, and the film was distributed locally in 4 Kansas City theaters in October of 1978. It became this word-of-mouth sleeper hit, and then it was selected to screen in November 1978 at the Chicago Film Festival, where the country's major critics acclaimed it. From there, it became a major box office success and grossed over $70 million worldwide and sold over 20 million tickets in North America, becoming the most profitable independent film of its time.
Ooh la la.
Ooh la la. So, when we actually think about what Michael Myers looks like, he is a guy. He's a guy. He's a guy in a jumpsuit, and he's got a mask on. That's Michael Myers.
Does he have a mask on?
Yes!
Why am I not
What?
remembering what Michael Myers looks like?
Yeah, it's in the original Halloween, they had a mask that they didn't like, so then they went to the store and they found a William Shatner Star Trek mask, and they painted it white.
Yes. Yeah.
Again, Michael Myers does not talk, does not fuck. People do want to be fucking him. Do you remember last year, I saw all of these videos constantly of, like, girls taking their boyfriends to Spirit Halloween specifically to pick a mask for their boyfriend to wear while they have sex with them.
No, I don't remember that, but I believe you that happened.
And it was almost always a Michael Myers mask, which I think is crazy.
Interesting.
I think if you're gonna pick one, you gotta go Ghostface.
I don't know why. This is like when you ask me what country I would want to kiss a person from. For me, my answer is none of them.
This just is not my yum. It's not my,
No.
It's not my kink.
No. Oh, I'm getting some sexy Michael Myers fan art when I look up Michael Myers on the good old Google.com.
Yeah,
Let me send you this one.
People want to.
Let me send you this one, Aubrey, because it's kind of crazy. Like, why are we making him ripped as shit, you know?
Yeah, this is an image of Michael Myers, and he's got the bloody knife, and then the jumpsuit is zipped down, and he just has an 8-pack.
Yeah.
I like how they have him having, like, cool guy hair in it, even though the mask is not cool guy hair.
No.
In Halloween, this is much more of a trope when it comes to Friday the 13th, but Halloween does this to a lesser extent, where when the mask is taken off, you can see some kind of facial disfigurement on Michael Myers, which also doesn't really make sense in the canon of Halloween, because Michael Myers was just like a 6-year-old boy who killed his sister and then went to an asylum, so it makes like no sense that he would have facial disfigurements, but sure, fuck it. Then we have Friday the 13th, which was another sleeper hit. It was an incredibly commercially successful slasher film, which grossed more than $59.7 million and sold nearly 15 million tickets in North America. Essentially, Friday the 13th is always considered the kind of, like, lesser, younger sibling of Halloween, where it's kind of like, oh, it's like an exploitation film, it's not as artsy as Halloween. I find them fun. When you talk to the people who were making Friday the 13th, they really admit that they were not trying to make a piece of art. They were trying to make a movie that was as successful as Halloween, and they were like, what is another holiday we could use that's scary? And they went Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th has, like, that date has, like, no meaning in the canon of Friday the 13th. It's not like Jason's birthday or anything. It's, like, just the name of the movie. One thing with each Friday the 13th movie, and this is where I think Friday the 13th is probably the most problematic in its portrayal of visually disfigured people, is, like, every Friday the 13th movie has a scene where Jason's mask is taken off, except for the first one. and it's revealed that he has some kind of disfigurement, and he's just portrayed as like more and more monstrous as time goes on. I actually think that like later portrayals that make him almost unhuman and more monster are probably better than earlier portrayals that just show him as like a guy with disfigurements. I don't know. Let's see if we can find the unmasked Jasons. There we go. Oh, here we go. All right, I'll send you this, McKenna.
Oh my god. I guess I will say that like Friday the 13th is the one that I know the least about, just in totality. Like I don't really even know, like before now I didn't even really know like the Jason lore. I was a little bit more familiar with, obviously I've seen Halloween. I was familiar with Scream and Nightmare on Elm Street despite not having seen them, but I was not really familiar with Friday the 13th at all. So this is genuinely very surprising to me to see what unmasked Jason looks like.
Yeah, so essentially the lore of Friday the 13th is that Jason Voorhees is this little boy, and his camp counselors are too busy fucking and drinking, and he drowns in Camp Crystal Lake. And then in the first Friday the 13th, it's actually Jason's mom, Pamela Voorhees, who is the masked killer. But then starting in Friday the 13th Part 2, you have actual Jason, who comes back and is the killer. But yeah, so like I think the depictions of unmasked Jason, they range from like comically insensitive depiction of a disabled person to like just a zombie. And I think just a zombie is probably the better choice.
I agree, because they're also getting into some weirdness.
Yeah. Well, and Jason's whole thing is that he's basically indestructible. Like, there's a whole Friday the 13th movie where it's revealed there's like a CIA sting, and they're like just shooting Jason in the head a bunch to like hide his body in a box to just ship it somewhere. Oh, and then they ship it into space. That's like the whole thing of Jason X. It's Jason in space. And then
sorry, I had to process that. Jason in space? That's a Friday the 13th movie?
Yeah, Jason X from 2001.
I love the Fast and the Furious franchise.
You mean you're not familiar with Jason X, who has who randomly David Cronenberg is in the cast of that movie?
Sure.
Because why not? I love what Jason looks like in Jason X, because he's very bulky. He's like very muscular in that one. Again, for no reason. Jason does not fuck. I don't think people want to fuck Jason as much as they want to fuck Michael Myers, though.
I don't know what the Michael Myers thing is. Maybe it's like some weird infantilization shit, honestly. Like, there might... I don't want to, like, get into that, but, like, maybe a little bit... yikes, yucky.
I think it's, like, more of that fantasy of, like, frankly, it's, like, it's a rape fantasy. It's, like, this guy is gonna come in and just, like, not say anything, and he's evil, and he's gonna fuck me.
Sure, yeah.
Like, I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
And again, like, not to yuck anyone's yum, I don't know. If you were one of the girls who posted a video about getting your boyfriend a Michael Myers mask to rail you while you were at Spirit Halloween, send us an email at informedattraction@gmail.com. Then we have Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street. This revitalizes the slasher genre by mixing fantasy and supernatural elements into the slasher genre. Essentially, Nightmare on Elm Street is known for its iconic villain, Freddy Krueger, who haunts your dreams. And Freddy Krueger becomes a cultural phenomena. Freddy Krueger, he does fuck. Unfortunately, canonically, he does have sex with children. Not great.
I know that information, but I also always forget that.
Yeah, like, that's also what's, like, weird for me, is that, like, Freddy Krueger, especially in the sequels, is just so much more like, haha, I'm making a punny joke, and then I kill you. And then you remember that he is canonically a pedophile.
He's on the list.
Yes! Freddy Krueger is the Jeffrey Epstein of the Nightmare on Elm Street universe.
But with big old claws for hands.
How dare I say something so controversial, yet so brave? Fun fact, if you go on Wikipedia, there is an entire Wikipedia of category fictional pedophiles. A lot shorter than I would have thought, to be completely honest with you. Probably for the best.
I don't know. I think I'm good on the pedophile media. There's too much of it in real life. I don't know that I need to see it in my television and film programs.
So essentially, Freddy Krueger is made up to look like a burn victim. Essentially, Freddy Krueger is a child serial killer / serial rapist from the town of Springwood, Ohio, and he kills his victims with a bladed leather glove that he crafted in a boiler room where he used to take his 20 victims. He is captured for doing all of the child killing, but he's set free on a technicality when it's discovered that the search warrant wasn't signed in the right place. Something that I'm sure would have happened. He's then hunted down by a mob made up of the town's vengeful parents, and he's cornered in the boiler room where he killed all of the children. And then the mob douses the building with gasoline, and they set it on fire by throwing Molotov cocktails, burning him alive. While his body dies, his spirit lives on within the dreams of the teenagers and children who live on Elm Street, who he preys on by entering their dreams and killing them, and he's essentially fueled by the town's memories and fear of him. So it's like, if you think of him, he's real. Some people might want to fuck Freddy Krueger. If you're legally an adult, probably is not wanting to fuck you.
Weird question. Is it only children?
Only children that he kills?
Yes.
Yes.
And thus also, okay. Maybe I need to watch these movies to understand what's happening here.
What is your question?
Does he have sex with every child he murders?
No, and I will say, I think in the first Friday the 13th, they don't necessarily call him a child rapist. It's been a while since I've watched the original Friday the 13th. Part of why I'm hammering in on the child rape so much is that in the reboot from the 2010s, it has the worst goddamn plot of all time. This is the one that stars Rooney Mara or some shit, and basically in that, the main character, Rooney Mara's character, she's supposed to be one of the victims of Freddy Krueger, but she's repressed the memories so hard that she doesn't remember whether it happened. And then the movie's just kidding, Freddy Krueger was framed and all of your parents were actually wrong and they killed an innocent man. And then it's just kidding, later on, he actually did do all that stuff, and you were molested as a child by Freddy Krueger. And that's, the big plot reveal of the 2010s remake. So, yeah. To me...
I see. I mean, here's the thing. Being an adult having sex with a child is too many children, so I think it's okay for you to be harping on this point.
I mean, he's evil. He's evil.
Fuck that guy. Fuck Freddy Krueger, but don't.
Don't. Yeah, so again, when we get into this idea of, disability and slashers, if you're somebody who's been, a burn victim, the portrayal of Freddy Krueger may or may not be something that you like. And that was something that I was curious about, finding, other people who are disabled, their opinions on these topics. So, and granted, I did go into, the horror subreddits for this, so this is obviously biased by, horror fans. But I did find a couple quotes from disabled horror fans that, I don't know, I just thought were interesting to think about. So the first one was from a Reddit user who said, "Most of these types of characters are actually sympathetic villains, manipulated by normal but abusive and usually narcissistic parent figures, so I think it's okay. It shows how vulnerable people who aren't inherently bad can become bad people because of a bad influence." And that's probably largely talking about, Jason Voorhees. There's a lot of lore with, Jason's relationship with his mom and how the reason he kills is because he hears his mom telling him to do stuff. Then another quote that I saw was someone saying, "Hey, I'm not neurotypical and not able-bodied, and I'm going to speak on this topic. I'd rather be shown as a villain than as a victim or a very special episode character. At least many of the villains have agency and aren't just two-dimensional plot moments. I'm pretty sure I empathize more with Jason than with Rain Man." And I don't know. I thought that was a good point. Like, I think that there are portrayals of disabled people, like Rain Man, right? Is a movie where you have somebody who does not have a disability portraying somebody with a developmental disability to mass acclaim, kind of at the begrudging tolerance of the disabled community, who's like, I guess it's good that people like know that this is a thing and have sympathy for this character, but it's not actually doing anything to elevate the disabled community in any way.
Yeah, I think obviously you walked us through this whole history, but like, you know, you're talking about Freaks, where people were so upset by just by seeing disabled people on screen, and I think that like in some of these examples they like try to make them more like feel more like in the Frankenstein vein of like monstrous. But like specifically I think about with like Michael Myers, there's like a lot of like even like developmental disability stuff going on with him in a way that it's like it feels like now, instead of like the Freaks reaction of like, oh God, why are you showing me that, now there's like a marveling at these people who are other than us. None of them have things that I would say are like immediately recognizable as like disabilities that like we see regularly in the world. Like, you know, it's they're not like these like clear mobility issues and things like that. But like, you know, looking at those pictures of like Jason Voorhees, I think about like the movie that came out last year with Sebastian Stan and Adam, whose last name I forget, A Different Man. And it's like that the Jason Voorhees images do look the way that Adam Pearson like just like looks as a person. And so there is like a weird thing where it's like people who look like Adam Pearson have always existed. For those who don't know, A Different Man is about an actor who gets a medical procedure to look more quote unquote normal. This is Sebastian Stan's character, but then it turns into a nightmare because then Adam Pearson, who plays this other actor, starts getting all this acclaim because of how he looks, the interesting way that he looks. And Adam Pearson was also in Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson. Anyway, all to say that like those images of Jason Voorhees are really particularly striking to me because of how much like some of those images look like Adam Pearson, and some of them look more like sci-fi alien-y, and that's why I think your point about like the zombie being better is probably true, because some of those images of Jason, I'm like, that looks too much like how real people look.
Right. Well, and I didn't even get into other slashers that are in a similar vein of this, like My Bloody Valentine, or various movies that depict a slasher villain who, I mean, I think that the challenge is when you're thinking about character design and creating a slasher, you need to create a character who is human in some way, because it doesn't make sense if they're not human. And they also can't just be a guy in a mask, because a slasher isn't just a guy in a mask. It's something more than that.
Yeah, totally. And it's I think that there's like, again, I've not seen the Scream movies, but there's something interesting in what you're saying about like with Scream, like it being a bunch of different people who are Ghostface at different times.
Yeah.
Because then like the mask is just a function of hiding identity.
Yeah.
And as opposed to like cloaking some sort of disability, disfigurement, etc., which I think is perhaps chiller. It's chiller.
Yeah, well, the Scream movies are at their core murder mysteries, where when you watch them, the big question in your mind as you're watching it is, who's gonna be Ghostface? Who was the killer all along? Whereas with Friday the 13th, you know it's Jason.
Right.
And then it's just a matter of how do you actually depict that person. I also think these are like meant to be foils of the final girl, right? Because the final girl is always a conventionally attractive, smart, honestly usually pretty reserved young woman in comparison to the rest of the cast. So it's like the Beauty and the Beast dichotomy.
Totally.
This is what made me think of like, I would be so intrigued to see a slasher movie that flips this somehow by having a slasher villain who's like very conventionally handsome and having a final girl who is like not conventionally attractive or is othered in some way.
Yeah. I wonder if that exists.
It might. I mean, I can't be the first person who's ever thought of this.
List of slasher films. Let's do some fucking scrolling, baby.
I mean, yeah. In my mind, it was a slasher movie where I am the final
You're
girl.
in this is the thing.
Yeah, I'm the final girl, and then the villain is James Marsden.
James Marsden is so crazy. Okay.
but would you be seated at the theater?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Me Googling final girls who are ugly. I didn't know how else to phrase it. Okay, well that's Madeline Brewer, so in fact, no. Yeah, I feel like maybe I can't find anything to this degree. If anyone knows of a non-traditionally attractive final girl, please let us know, because that would be really interesting.
I mean, like, if you think of like a traditionally attractive slasher, Patrick Bateman, arguably.
Yes. Totally. Oh, this is something that Argento said. I like women, especially beautiful ones. If they have a good face and figure, I would much prefer to watch them being murdered than an ugly girl or man. That's crazy. That's maybe a crazy thing to say.
You know what? Let's just strike that up to Lost in Translation.
And then also Hitchcock. Wait, okay. I'm like. But this is Hitchcock, so this is not Lost in Translation. Hitchcock said, I always believe in following the advice of the playwright Sardou. He said, torture the women. The trouble is today we don't torture women enough. Brother, I think you were torturing women just fine in the 1960s, my boy.
Yeah. Just
what?
Yeah.
Girls stay being tortured. I feel like the way that we like the thing that you're saying, Aubrey, is probably a very novel idea, but I think that there are like films that have like sort of tried to flip that thing on its trope, because you have things like The Invisible Man, where like
I hate that movie.
I hate that movie too. I want to say I hate that movie too. But like that sort of, you know, like because he's just invisible, but he's like this like rich tech guy.
Yeah.
The Witch, you know, the Witch isn't really a slasher. Yeah, it's hard. I would say The Invisible Man is like the closest thing that I can think of as like one that has sort of like tried to flip that on its head by not making it like a and like Elizabeth Moss is very pretty, but she wasn't like a 21-year-old college girl in that movie. Yeah, like so that like I feel like they were trying with that one to be doing that. And then like a lot of like Good for Her movies are like kind of flipping that on its head. Yeah. I mean, yeah. And I think I mentioned Under the Skin. Like Under the Skin it's like an alien slasher, but it's kind of a slasher in that like she is the one doing the killing of these men. But yeah.
God, I love Under the Skin. That's one of those movies where if I tell someone, oh yeah, Under the Skin, and if they're like, oh, I love that movie, I know that movie, I fuck with you now.
Yeah. I think Jonathan Glazer is just, you know, between that and Zone of Interest, like he's really made some bangers.
Got the sauce.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the plan for next episode is to watch Candyman, which is a movie that I love. It links this idea of, I don't know, appearance with racial trauma and this idea of exposing rather than hiding the social causes of stigma. I think Candyman is such an incredible movie. I'm actually so excited for Mackenna to watch this, because this is the kind of movie that I think they can just dig their teeth into, and I really just want to know what you think of it, because I think your analysis of film is so cool, and this is a movie that I think has a million layers to it, and I really think you're going to appreciate, and then you're going to watch it and be like, 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd.
Yeah, you still trust me to watch this now that you know I didn't like The Monkey as much as you?
Candyman is so different.
Okay. And you want to watch the old one, not the new one, right?
Yeah, the new one is terrible.
I feel like the new one, I haven't seen it, but what I didn't like about the advertising for the new one is I feel like they were really trying to trick us into thinking that Jordan Peele directed it, when it wasn't. It was Nia DaCosta.
That's what every fucking thing that's produced by Jordan Peele now, they try to make it seem like he directed it. You know what I'm gonna say that's controversial yet brave?
What?
Jordan Peele is the new M. Night Shyamalan. I said it.
What?
I said it.
What does that even mean?
I said it.
What does it mean? You give me more.
I think he's had a good run. A good run of movies in his early career, and I think the more he puts out, the more we're realizing we might have put too much pressure on him.
He's only put out like 3 movies.
And in my opinion, it's been getting worse.
Oh, I liked Nope more than I liked Us, so I disagree.
I didn't like Us, and I did not like Nope.
Oh, I was fine on Us. I liked it until the end. I didn't think the ending made sense. I really liked Nope. I mean, Get Out is like a near perfect movie.
I think Get Out is great. I think people glaze it, and that's the only...
Me, I glaze it. I think it's a near... I predicted what was going to happen in Get Out, because as soon as she hit that deer and didn't give a shit about it, I was like, that motherfucker cannot be trusted. But I still was like, hell yeah.
My thing is that I love Get Out. I think Get Out is an amazing movie. I think you can tell that Get Out was a passion project that he had sat on for many years.
Sure.
And I just think that both with Us and with Nope, I'm like, there's not that, it hasn't been cooking for as long as you were cooking Get Out.
Oh, see, I don't know. I liked Nope, but I liked all the I liked the weird tangents that Nope went on, which I know a lot of people didn't. But I was like, I was just like, yeah, fuck it. Let him cook. Let him do some weird shit.
And you know what? That's how I felt about the monkey.
All right. Have a question or a topic that you would like for us to discuss? Send us an email at informedattraction@gmail.com.